After filings, the fallout seems to be getting worse every day. Rebel Cole of DePaul University is here to talk about the latest. Welcome back, Rebel.
Thank you.
So we know that major lenders are reviewing their procedures. Now they chalk it up to, quote unquote, a paperwork problem. Could it be bigger than that?
Well, what they call a paperwork problem, a lot of the rest of us call it a perjury problem. What we have is a lot of bank employees who have filed false affidavits with the courts around the country claiming that they have personal knowledge of what's in the affidavits and in the loan files when they do not. Subsequently, we've learned that they lied.
Okay.
It's perjury.
So what about, let's get into the technical details. Like, they're signing these affidavits about what's in these files. Now, are these technical errors in these files that have been overlooked, or is it the question of whether the bank actually owns the mortgage?
The real issue is who owns the note. And what we're finding out more and more is the chain of title has been broken in the securitization process. You're supposed to go to the county courthouse and record every time a title changes hand or a note is changed. So you file an affidavit of ownership. They haven't done this. Now when they get to the foreclosure process, they can't prove they own the note.
Okay, so there's a big question here about whether the banks really have ownership of the property that they're trying to sell at foreclosure.
Well, it gets more complicated than that because they've delegated nominal ownership to another third-party entity known as the Mortgage Electronic Registry System. So the mortgage note may say that MERS owns the note, and MERS is trying to foreclose, but they're simply a nominee in name only, and the actual owner is a bank.
Okay, well, let's take a look at some of the statements we've seen here. First of all, though, we've heard from Bank of America, JP Morgan, GMAC saying that they're taking actions, they're reviewing their procedures. Let's take a look now what Citigroup has said. We continuously review, document handling in our foreclosure operations, and we believe the integrity of our process is sound. We have no indication that our employees are not following our current procedures, and we do not believe a suspension is necessary. Here's what GMAC has said this week. GMAC Mortgage has found no evidence to date of any inappropriate foreclosures. Now, do you believe them when they say this?
It's simply inaccurate. There are cases all over the country that refute this, where judges are throwing mortgages out, throwing these cases out, forcing them to bring in new documentation because it's simply not the case. We have the Robo-Signers who have testified in court that they fraudulently signed affidavits claiming that they knew what was going on in the cases when they did not.
What do you think the potential outcome could be of this joint investigation with all the 50 state attorneys general? I mean, are they going to be forcing the banks to actually do mass loan modifications, or what could these states force the lenders to do?
Well, what they can't do is clean up the dirty titles, which is the real problem here. What they can do is extort the big banks into massive loan modifications, which apparently is the strategy. So this has turned into a big political football that is being used by the attorneys generals to force the banks into loan modifications that they thus far have refused to make.
Okay, could these states also force them into to offer principal forgiveness, which these banks have been reluctant to do?
Well, that's really what I'm hearing is the bottom line. Is they're targeting something like 30% principal reduction. We're talking massive write-downs to these mortgages in order to deal with the housing crisis.
Okay, do you think that these states really have that much leverage to force these lenders to do these huge modifications?
It depends on how much bad behavior they can document by the lenders, but my guess is they probably do. This is such a pervasive problem. It's not going away anytime soon, and as you say, it seems to get worse day by day.
And not to mention, we're also looking at potential penalties that these banks have to pay as well.
Well, that's the real stick that the attorney generals have. They can use anti-fraud and consumer protection laws to threaten the banks with massive fines, on a case-by-case basis for $1,000 times millions of cases. So that's their stick to get the banks to come to a settlement, come to the table, and agree to do something that the attorney generals want, which is probably some sort of massive mortgage modification program.
Okay, we'll see how this plays out, and we'll be watching it, of course, with Rebel Cole of DePaul University.